This is July 10th, 2022, and I'm going to talk more in this Teisho about Buddhism as a religion. That was my last Teisho as well. This is kind of going further into it. I see that I gave something similar. My records show I gave a similar Teisho 18 years ago. I hope that those of you who heard it and remember it can put it up with hearing something similar today. I'm drawing from an excellent book called just simply Buddhism, A Concise Introduction. And this is by Houston Smith and Philip Novak. This for anyone who wants to learn more about just Buddhism in general, not specifically Zen, but Buddhism in general. This is one of the 2 or 3 that I would most highly recommend. Buddhism by Smith and Novak. Houston Smith is an old pal of Roshi Kapleau. Very brief personal story. When I was in my early years on staff, I was in Boston during a staff break, and I got it in my head that I wanted to go visit Houston Smith at MIT, and where he was a professor of religion. And I got as far as his door, the door of his office. It had in gold, Houston Smith, professor, and I retreated. I told him that once. I had some contact with him many years later. I told him, he said, "Oh, I wish you had come in." Really wonderful, friendly, unpretentious guy. So what I'm going to talk about is here somewhat distinguished between Zen as such and Buddhism. Again, remember, Zen emerged out of the soil of Buddhism, and for most of the history of Zen, it was a sect. It was a school of Buddhism. You became a Zen Buddhist. But now in this century in the West, you don't have to be a Buddhist to practice Zen. I think the linkage historically was largely a monastic one. That to practice Zen, you became a Buddhist monk. And now you can distinguish between the two. I think you could put a slash mark between Zen and Buddhism. You can practice Zen and not be a Buddhist, but if you practice Zen long enough, you see that it confirms, especially through awakening, it confirms Buddhist doctrine. So here is a chapter in the book Buddhism. The chapter is called The Rebel Saint. And the authors here speak of there are six features. He says here, 6 features that contribute importantly to religion, but equally each can clog its works. In the Hinduism of the Buddha's day, remember he's from India, 2,500 years ago, and Buddhism, even scholars will say that Buddhism sort of emerged from Hinduism. In the Buddhism of the Buddha's day, these 6 features of religion had done so, the authors say here, all 6 of them. The 6 of them, just briefly now, are authority. That is the 6 aspects, to say, of religion in general. Authority, ritual, speculation, tradition, grace, and mystery. It begins with the first one, authority, and saying that authority had become hereditary in Buddhism, and not authority had become hereditary in Hinduism and exploitative, as the Brahmins, this the sort of the ruling class of priests, they took to hoarding their religious secrets and charging exorbitantly for their ministrations. I have to admit that in modern Japan, Zen has largely become hereditary. Zen authority has largely become hereditary as well. From many sources I've read that now to become a Zen teacher, you just have to spend 6 months of training in some kind of a temple, and that gives you license to inherit the temple from your father. It's really no wonder Zen temples and monasteries are closing their doors at an alarming rate in Japan. It's not based on insight or even putting in some seniority or some years of practice. It's become largely hereditary, father to son. The second aspect of religion he identifies as ritual. And in Hinduism, the Hinduism of the Buddhist time, rituals had become mechanical means for obtaining miraculous results. The third feature, speculation, the authors say it devolved into meaningless hair-splitting. Tradition, the fourth aspect of religion, had turned into a dead weight, in one specific by insisting that Sanskrit, no longer understood by the masses, remained the language of religious discourse. Reminds me a little bit, I have to say, of the where Roshi Kapleau and his teacher Yasutani Roshi butted heads over the chanting of the Prajnaparamita. This was right at the onset of Zen Center's formation, where Roshi Kapleau insisted that we be able to chant the Prajnaparamita in English, just as the Koreans chanted in Korean, the Chinese chanted in Chinese, Japanese chanted in Japanese, the Vietnamese chanted in Vietnamese. The fifth aspect is grace. He says here that God's grace was being misread in ways that undercut human responsibility. If indeed responsibility any longer had any meaning, where karma, likewise misread, was confused with fatalism. And then the sixth feature of religion is mystery, which he said is confused with mystery mongering and mystification, perverse obsession with miracles, the occult, and the fantastic. Now, having mentioned those 6 things, I'm going to go back over them in a little more detail, and also include the Zen perspective. So the first aspect of religion, authority. The Buddha taught a faith devoid of authority, and his attack had 2 prongs. On the one hand, he wanted to break the monopolistic grip on authority that the Brahmins had exerted. This reminds me, just recently I learned that, maybe others of you already knew this, that Martin Luther, what really split open gave birth to the Reformation, in large part was his translating the New Testament into German. It had been accessible until then only through Latin, and the educated people of the time were the only ones who could read it. And then he translated it into German, and this just raised hell with the whole church. Then the second aspect of the Buddha's questioning authority was toward individuals. This is a time when people generally in India were passively relying on Brahmins to tell them what to do. And that's when the Buddha challenged each individual to do their own religious seeking and rational investigation. And then another part, last week I quoted these famous words of the Buddha. Here's a little bit more to it. Do not go upon what has been acquired by repeated hearing, nor upon tradition, nor upon rumor, nor upon what is in a scripture, nor upon the consideration, the monk is our teacher. And that's what he said when he said that each one of us needs to put a Zen interpretation. Each one of us needs to put our primary faith into direct experience. What we find out through our zazen, through our Zen practice, sitting and moving Zen practice. This can be tricky because there are those who go too far, I would say, in that direction, who say, well, this is my experience, and so that's what is true. There's this phrase out there where two people come to misunderstanding about facts. So someone might be arguing that the Democrats are involved in as a whole, as a party, are involved in child abuse and pizza parlors and no, you can't make this stuff up. It's so bizarre. Just look at QAnon. So those who believe that and those who deny that, and then the first person who believes in the pizza parlors will say, well, that's your truth. This is my truth. Is there any hope for us? So that's the danger, is we just insist that our own particular take on something is the truth. So recognizing that, though, that danger, Zen insists that it's beyond words, it's beyond the sutras, beyond doctrine, certainly beyond dogma. We have to confirm through our experience in sitting and moving meditation, confirm everything. It's really what the Buddha was saying. In Zen, it starts with koan number 1 in the Mumonkan, where a monk asks the great Joshu, does even a dog have Buddha nature? And Zhao replied, Mu, which is often translated as no or not, which flies in the face of what the sutras say, that all what is common to all sentient life is this perfect, luminous, true mind. Authority. You don't have to believe what the Buddha said, but if you sit long enough, go to enough sessions, you will see that it is largely true. And here's another qualification: is the translations. The first 200 years after the Buddha, during his lifetime, and for 200 years after it, there was no written record of what he said, which would be enough to give anyone pause. And I used to tell myself, well, why should I believe anything the Buddha said, given that fact, how much it can be distorted over time, his teaching. But remarkably enough, I've only become more and more convinced of the veracity of the translations of his teaching. It's just stunning, the profundity of his teaching. I have less and less doubt about as time goes on. The second, after authority, the second aspect that the authors identify to religion is ritual. From what the text we have, the Buddha taught a religion devoid of ritual. He ridiculed all the rigmarole of Brahmin rites as superstitious petitions to ineffectual gods. This is what he's supposed to have said, the Buddha: to seek to win peace through others, such as priests and sacrificers, is the same as if a stone were thrown into deep water, and now people, praying and imploring and folding their hands, came and knelt down all around, saying, "Rise, O dear stone! Come to the surface, O dear stone!" But the stone remains at the bottom. But here too, we can acknowledge that we do have rituals in Zen. In fact, what religion doesn't have rituals? Really. If it's a religion, it has rituals. Otherwise, it's more likely a philosophy. But the rituals in Zen, such as they are, such as, let's say, well, let's just pick out something randomly. Offering to hungry ghosts and thirsty spirits. That whole concept may be foreign to some of you who haven't been around very long, but it's a traditional ritual in the monasteries and in here at this Zen Center and other Zen centers, where before eating you take a little tiny corner of crust or something, a little bit of, and you circle it above your plate 3 times, raise it up, palm up, and then you place it in what is the hungry ghost, first the hungry ghost and this thirsty spirit dish, a little bit of liquid to put in that. Okay, it's a ritual, but let's look more closely. It's a way of embodying what? It's a way of first of all, of reminding ourselves that there are tens of millions of people who are going hungry and even without water. When we physically do something, it's entirely different than just thinking about it. So it's a reminder that we are fortunate indeed to have food to drink and water. But it's also a way of reminding ourselves of our own cravings and how we have to be mindful of our tendencies toward gluttony, for example. It's a kind of a way of embodying a sharing and an awareness of of our privilege, really. And so, knowing that the great Chinese and Japanese and Korean masters all did this is meaningful. Is meaningful to me, and I don't need to quibble with it, and I feel responsible for passing this on as a ritual. Same you could say with prostrations. Prostrations are a way to physically embody an attitude of reverence, an attitude of humility, getting the head down. It's very different from just words. And bowing, the standing bow, get that head down. It matters. That's what we're doing. We're materializing these spiritual qualities of humility, respect. Buddhism has always been not in conflict with the scientific, in that it made the quality of lived experience the final test, as we were just saying, and it directed its attention to natural cause and effect relationships that affected that experience. The third aspect of religion is speculation. Most of you know that we have no use for this in Zen, the Zen school of Buddhism. Nor did the Buddha, really. The Buddha, as the authors say, the Buddha skirted the thicket of theorizing with his analogy about the arrow. Someone asked, I can't remember which fundamental question it was. Let's say, well, how is it? This is one that comes up at workshops. Where did this sense of self come from? Where did the ego idea come from? And something similar was asked of the Buddha, and he said, well, this would be like a man who was shot by an arrow in battle, and he were to stop in his tracks and say, I wonder if this arrow was made of ash or maple or oak. I wonder if the feathers were from a quail or a pheasant or an eagle. I wonder if the tip was made from flint or iron or quartz. And then, of course, the point being, the important thing is to get the damn arrow out of you, to take care, to practically solve the problem of egoistic craving and delusion. But it doesn't matter where it came from. We have this fundamental delusion of self and other and us and them. How can we see through that? And there are, I think, more koans than ever about this matter of speculation, where Zen has no truck with speculation. The one that springs to mind is where two monks were arguing about a flag that was flapping in the wind. The monastery flag was flapping in the wind, and one, employing his own philosophical perspective, said, "It's not really the wind that's moving that we see; it's the flag that's moving." And then someone wanted to take issue with that, and he said, "No, I would say it's the wind that's moving. The flag wouldn't be moving without the wind." And they went back and forth, and then the sixth patriarch emerged from the woods, according to one account, came upon the scene and said, "It's not the wind that moves, it's not the flag that moves, it's your minds that move." Fourth feature, tradition. Now, this is one we have to be careful about. You can see Zen in at least two ways. One is the method of Zen, which is sitting. It starts with sitting, and then other things related to posture. The method of concentrating on the breath, or koan, whatever. This is all part of the tradition. The tricky part comes when we have to sort of discern what of the Eastern Asian tradition, out of which Zen arose, what of that tradition is salient, what is helpful to us, as in this case, as us as Westerners. The Buddha, the authors point out, the Buddha taught in the vernacular of the people. He didn't stick to Sanskrit. He made an accommodation to the many people who didn't know Sanskrit, the language of the Brahmins. And this is, you could say in a way, is one of the very two or three primary functions of a teacher in Zen, is to make this the judgment of what to hold on to from East Asia and what to let go of. It's an ongoing process. It's the central topic. It's been the central topic of every meeting of the American Zen Teachers Association that I've been to. So really what it comes down to is, how do we adapt to the West this tradition that originated in the Confucian agrarian time of East Asia. My tendency, I think, is to be a little bit conservative with it, out of concern of not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, as Roshi used to say over and over. That I guess I fall back on the belief that that in time, what is not suitable for us as Westerners will be sloughed off. We don't have to decide using our conscious minds, our imperfect, discriminating minds, what should go and what should stay. That having been said, we have made changes now that would be a surprise, probably, if not a disappointment, to those in the East Asian Zen. One of the big ones, is giving women their rightful place in this tradition. This was a real major flaw in Asian the Asian Zen Chan, is really having no place for women, relatively speaking, almost entirely. It was a tradition of male teachers. We've always struggled a bit with the Japanese words for instruments that we use here, and other things regarding the ceremonies, the devotional part of Zen. Even as recently as a year or two ago, we finally agreed that we can start calling the wooden block that hangs here, is suspended outside of the zendo, to call that the wooden block. The problem is that it's so much easier to say just Han. That's the Japanese Han, the Han, one syllable, instead of the wooden block. But we're trying to do that and other things without getting tangled up in something that is cumbersome. It's hard. This is hard. What to keep and what to let go. I love the words of T.S. Eliot, who said, "Tradition cannot be inherited, and if you want it, you must obtain it by great labor." The fifth aspect of religion the authors identify is grace. In Hinduism, it devolved over time, so say the academics, into fatalism. Why make any effort when we can just rely on the grace of God or one of their 100,000 gods? The Buddha had wanted no part of this. He taught effort, self-effort, and the possibility of enlightenment in this life. There's a charming story in this collection called Stories of the Spirit, Stories of the Heart, and the newer title is Soul Food. It's just an anthology of stories, and here's the one that I would say involves grace or even prayer, where a Zen master was invited to a great Catholic monastery. He exhorted the monks there to exert themselves in their meditation, resolve their koans, question with great energy. And if they could practice with this long enough, with enough perseverance, true understanding would come to them. And then one of these old Catholic monks raised his hand and said, "Master, our way of prayer is different than this. We've been meditating and praying in the simplest fashion without effort, waiting instead to be illuminated by the grace of God. In Zen, is there anything like this illuminating grace that comes to one uninvited?" At that, the Zen master looked back and laughed. "In Zen," he said, "we believe that God has already done his share." But then we got to be careful here too, because so much of this is a matter of semantics. Awakening cannot occur so long as we imagine that we can do it. There's no one here to do anything. This is the teaching of no self. This is the experience of no self. You could say that no person has ever done it. It comes to us. It is a kind of grace. But it's a grace that we earn through effort. Recently I was advising someone who's pretty new to practice. It was in Doksan. He asked this question that many have asked, the same question. How much of this is effort and how much of it is relaxing? And what I said comes from my whole career, which is that we want to find the equipoise between effort on the one hand and surrender on the other. But we don't have to find it exactly. It's not something we can construct. It's not a project. It happens through long-term practice. We find more and more of a balance. In the beginning, we tend to be, in terms of effort, it's one or the other. We're either straining with some grasping state of mind to get somewhere, or we're just being lazy. We're just waiting for something to happen. And then as time goes on, we see that neither of those two extremes is effective. And so, willy-nilly, if we persist, if we keep this practice going day in and day out, month after month, year after year, we do find our way to that, maybe a kind of a fusion between effort and surrender. To the degree that we're absorbed in the breath, we are opening and releasing, and in that sense surrendering. To the degree that we're questioning the koan, we will find our way into more of a surrendering to it, to this not knowing. And that's when everything can change. The sixth of the aspects of religion they identify is mystery, or as we'd say in Zen, not knowing. They say that the Buddha condemned divination, soothsaying, forecasting, even psychic and other paranormal powers. In some types of Buddhism, a lot is made of rebirth, sometimes called reincarnation, but more correctly rebirth, because there's no soul to be reincarnated. In Tibetan Buddhism, from what I gather, is a hot topic, reincarnation. In Zen, not so much. In Zen, the emphasis is on being present. And this was also true with the Buddha. Someone once asked about, he was asked once by someone about their past life. And he said, if you want to know what you were in the past, look at yourself now. If you want to know what you'll be in the future, look at yourself now. Look at this. There's no point in speculating. Zen has often been called, in textbooks, it's often been called the mystical school of Buddhism. And sometimes it's compared to Sufism, the mystical school of Islam, and other mystical schools. But what that means, as I understand it, really is it rests on direct experience. Of what? Wittgenstein said, that the world is the mystical. Walt Whitman, a single flea is miracle enough to stagger sextillions of infidels. This, the mystery of this, and this is, who is it? Voltaire, French philosopher. It is no more surprising to think of being born twice as it is to be born once. Birth. A being, a formed being emerging from another being. What could be more freaky than that? This is really the heart of the Zen school of Buddhism. You know, there are other schools of Buddhism that involve memorizing and learning and speculate, probably some speculation and arguing. In Zen, it really all comes down to this mystery of things as they are, and every particular practice method, the breath practice, the koan practice, and shikantaza. Shikantaza is just, you could solve just basic awareness. They all can be seen as delivery systems into the unknown. We're trying to not avoid the unknown, not to avoid, non-void. We're trying to go into the void, that in the sense of the not knowing, that which is beyond our thoughts, our ideas, what we've learned, concepts, notions, systems. All those things are useful to a degree, but sitting at the center of it all is this realm of not knowing. And that's what Zen offers at its most essential, is how to let go of the known and get on better terms with the unknown and explore the unknown, investigate this realm of no thought. Our time is up. We'll stop and recite the 4 vows.